What up, YouTube? I'm back at it again. I know I haven't done one of these in a while, but I recently saw a problem that made me want to get back up. So here's the problem. It's number two, and it's saying that if 5a to the seventh power times b to the sixth power is less than or equal to zero, then which of the following must be true? So at first glance, you could try to solve this, but I mean, because of the way the question is worded, though, your best option in a test setting would simply be to plug in the various answer options that you're given to see how each of those answer options will make the equation react. And so we'll do that to see if the equation will be true at all times or will be true sometimes and sometimes will be false. I mean, if it's false at any point, then that cannot be our answer. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So let's start off with option A. So option A, we have b is greater than or equal to 0. So since b is greater than or equal to 0, let's make the problem easier on ourselves. Let's just pick the lowest number that we know is greater than 0. So let's just start with 1. So if that's the case, then we can say b is equal to 1. So let's assume that b is equal to 1. And then let's plug in 1 in for b. Let's plug in 1 in for b and see how what we get. If the equation is true at all times or true sometimes and false sometimes. So in this scenario, then we'll get 5a to the 7th power. And then b equaling to 1. 1 to the 6th power is still going to be 1. It's less than or equal to 0. Now we can simplify this, right? Because we know 1 to the 6th power, like I said, is still going to be 1. And so the simplification for this one will simply be 5a to the 7th power is less than or equal to 0. Now, is this true or is this false? Well, I mean, we can't really say, right? Because for us to be able to say that this is true, we would have to know the value of a. But we don't know the value of a. For all we care, a could be 1. If a tends to be turn out to be positive 1, then this would not be true, because this will make the equation simplify to 5 is less than or equal to 0, which will not just, it would just be untrue. So a cannot be our answer, since if we don't know what the value of a is. So option A cannot be our answer. So we'll move on to option B. Now, option B is saying that A is less than B. Okay, well, let's assume that. Let's assume that and see what happens. And so we get A is less than B. Okay, so I mean, for starters, A less than B. We could say that A is equal to, say, maybe -1. Now, if that's the case, then like the simplification we just went through, we'll have A -1 to the 7th power, and then B, which will be +1 to the 6th power. And this will be less than or equal to 0. Now, for this case, because of the numbers that I pick, this would actually turn out to be true, because this whole thing will simplify to -5 is less than or equal to 0, which will be true, right? But the question is this always true? To prove that if this is always true, we should also pick different numbers for A and B and see if that's the case. So for this instance, let's assume that A was equal to, say, +1 and B was equal to, say, 2. Then in that case, we'll get 5, and then we'll have 1 here. to the 7th power. And then we'll have b, which in this case would be 2 to the 6th power. And as we can see, this will not be true, right? Because this simplification wouldn't give us a negative number on the left side of this inequality. And so this cannot be true. And so we can also cross out option B, because we have found an area where this cannot be true. So we move on to option C. And option C is saying that B is less than or equal to 0. So let's try that and see what we get. So B less than or equal to 0, we can just set B. Let's make the problem again easy on ourselves and set B to -1. If we set B to -1, let's see what the whole equation simplifies to. So we get a to the 7th power, and then b, like we just said, is -1. And then we raise this to the positive 6th power, and we set up the inequality less than or equal to 0. Now, because this exponent is 6, the 6 is an even number, this 1 here, once we simplify, would turn out to be +1. And so the whole equation will simplify to 5a to the 7th power is less than or equal to 0. Again, we don't quite know what a is. A is still a variable. So until we know what that is, we can't say that this is true, because depending on what the value of a is, if a turn out to be negative, then this will be true. But if you plug in a positive a, then this will be false. And so again, we can cancel out option C. As it, we don't know what the value of a is. So now let's try option D and see what we get. So option D is saying that a is less than or equal to 0. So a is less than or equal to 0. We could just, in that case, then a should be a negative. Well, let's just make it easy on ourselves and set a to a negative number. So what we could do, just set up a to -1. So we set a to -1. We plug this into the equation to see what this simplifies to. So a -1 to the 7th power. And then we get b to the 6th power is less than or equal to 0. Now let's analyze this and see if this is always true, or sometimes true, or isn't true at all. So -1 to the 7th power will give us a -1 because of this exponent here. This exponent here is odd. So because it's odd, we'll end up with a negative number. So it'll be -1. -1 times 5 will be -5. So -5 times b to the 6th power is less than or equal to 0. So we get this simplification, and we'll get to analyze it. So is this always true? Or is this sometimes true, sometimes false, just like we realized with some of the options that we had previously? When we take a closer look, we see that this is actually always true because of this expression here, the b to the 6th power. The b to the 6th power, because the power is an even number, it doesn't matter what the value of b is. B could be a negative number, and due to that even exponent, it'll always turn out to be positive. The result will always turn out to be positive. And then if you plug in a positive for b, I mean, we obviously know that that should also be positive. And so in this case, then the expression or the term that should really matter is this negative term here, right? If the b is always going to be positive, then this -5 times whatever the value for b to the 6th power is should always give us a negative number. And so that makes this expression always true. And so option D has to be the correct answer. And so in this case, we don't even have to check for option E, since option D turns out to be the correct answer. So if you enjoyed this video, do make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, and leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll try my best to get back to you. I'm gonna try to make a lot more of these videos going forward. And I'm also, I mean, it's just a channel is going to be flooded with all sorts of content, so be on the lookout for that. And thank you for watching.